Welcome to another episode of Leadership Lessons. Our guest today is Laura Butler, and we're going to talk about why your church needs a women's ministry. The goal of our show is to help Kentucky Baptist leaders lead better. Laura, thank you for joining Leadership Lessons.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation today, so it's an honor.
You are so welcome. So let me tell you about Laura. Laura Butler is a native of Paducah, Kentucky. She's married to her husband, Boogie, in 2005, and they have two children. They have been in full-time ministry for over 20 years. After a 10-year journey through Tennessee, the Lord brought them back home to Kentucky in 2022 as Boogie took his first senior pastorate at 12 Oaks Baptist Church. And he's doing a great job, Laura. I know that you know that and others do, but he's doing well. Laura has been involved in women's ministry for over 20 years. Her greatest desire is for women to fall in love with God's Word and to hunger for it. So, Laura, once again, thank you. And some of our folks know you. You've been around Kentucky Baptist Life for a good while. But for those who may not know you, tell us your story. How did you get involved in women's ministry?
Well, it started out when my husband and I got married in 2005, and he was already in the ministry, and we were in student ministry. But I'm so thankful for women in that church that saw value to put a young voice, give them a seat at the table. Yeah. So from early on, I've been able to speak into women's ministry in some aspect. But yeah, I'm just thankful that they gave me the opportunity. And then when we got out of student ministry, I jumped right in head first into women's ministry. And it is a love that I have found. I love ministering to women, and we've gotten to serve on different church staff. So I'm very fortunate that I've gotten to see women's ministry done very healthy in different size churches, from over 5,000 to 300 and anywhere in between. So I'm very fortunate that I've had those opportunities to do that.
Laura, your answer is like so many folks involved in ministry leadership. Someone put you in a place, and because they saw something in you or they thought something about you, and they said, you come join this conversation. We need to hear from you. Thank you for honoring those who did that. So we're going to talk about why every church needs a women's ministry. Before we go any further, how would you define women's ministry? Is it events? Is it discipleship? Is it all the above? How would you define it?
Definitely all the above. The one thing that I really try to focus on, as women, we love to be seen, we love to be known, and we want to be noticed. And so I think that's what a women's ministry is, a place where women can come. They can be seen, known, and loved, not just by other ladies, but by their Creator God. And so it's an opportunity for us to be able to point them to Jesus in everything that we do. But for somebody who's never really walked into a church, it's so important that we know their name, that we are intentional with those relationships. So I think a women's ministry is a safe place for women to land, to be vulnerable, and in all things be pointed to Jesus. But events are super important. That's a more casual place where women can come and get to know other ladies and have a fun time of fellowship. But I will also, what I always tell our ladies is I love fun and I love fellowship. I'm a major extrovert. I love a big party, and I am a big advocate for that. But anybody can do that, right? There's women meeting all over the world that can have fun and fellowship. Mm-hmm. So our main purpose is to point people to Jesus, and Jesus to be talked about and known in everything that we do, even events-based. So, and then in discipleship, that's really my heartbeat, I would say. I love seeing women open the Word and it come alive, jump off the pages for maybe the very first time. And so they're both important. I think one kind of leads to another. And so I think you need it all in women's ministry.
Sounds like that you're ministering to the larger group, but you're also working closer with some, and then you're probably even doing some one-to-one ministry and encouragement for a select few. So, Laura, why do you believe women's ministry is essential for the health of a local church? So why is it important that, I think I hear you saying every church that has people, that's a church, should have a women's ministry. Why is that? How would you answer the why question?
Well, again, a place for women to be able to come and be vulnerable. But I also feel what I've seen over the years is when women have a place to land like that, it overflows to other areas of the church. They become more present, more faithful, serving in different areas, maybe into the kids ministry, the student ministry, the worship ministry, whatever it may be. I just think when they feel that connection, they want to be there. And when they want to be there, it's going to overflow into all areas of the church.
Has women's ministry impacted your life personally? How have you benefited from women's ministry?
It has. It really hasn't been that long ago, probably in the last 5 or 6 years. I was surrounded by a lot of women who kept talking about if it wasn't for so-and-so, whoever it may be, that poured into my life, that discipled me, I don't know where I would be today. And at that point in my life, I really hadn't had somebody one-on-one just walk through life and the scriptures with me, just one-on-one. And so they really challenged me to seek that out, to start praying for that. And so I'll never forget asking a lady at one of our churches, an older saint that I respected. I mean, when she would teach the Bible, it would just come alive. And so I asked her to lunch, and I asked her if she would disciple me, and she was honored to do that. And so we would start meeting weekly, and it just helped me, even as a pastor's wife, it helped me. And honestly, I can see the Lord's sovereignty, like he knew where we were going to be. And so it really prepared me for where he has me now. And so a women's ministry really spurred that along in me, because I was surrounded by women that pushed me and challenged me in that area.
So, Laura, we talk to folks a lot of times about disciple. If you're going to disciple someone, you look for someone who's faithful, available, teachable. But this is the other side. This is you seeking a person to invest in your life. I would imagine that for some people that question could have been very intimidating, like, oh, no, I can't help you or disciple you. How did you, what was it that you noticed about her? What were 2 or 3 traits? I heard you mention a couple of them, but what did you notice about her? So how would you guide someone else in your situation at that time who would say, I need a woman that I can talk to about life?
Yeah.
How would you guide them to look for a person like that and then to approach them?
Well, and I think that's the key, is to approach them. I knew probably somebody was not going to come to me and say, I think you need somebody to disciple you.
Right.
So, it took humility, it took vulnerability to be able to make that ask. But at the same time, what I looked for, what I needed in that time of my life, is I was reading chronologically through scripture, which I've done before, but I just wanted someone to talk about the scriptures with. That's really what I wanted. We talked a little bit about life, and I think that's great in discipleship. Yep. But for me personally, I wanted somebody super knowledgeable that we could just talk about the scriptures together. We were reading the same place, we were reading chronologically, and we could just get together. I could ask questions that maybe I didn't feel safe asking somewhere else. And she was very kind and generous of her time to spend with me.
Well, good for her, and good for you for asking. So let's help that church that wants to think about starting a women's ministry. What are some first steps that a church should take before launching a women's ministry?
Well, every church obviously looks different, and like I said, I've been able to see different ways it works in different churches. I've been on staffs where the women's minister is a full-time on-staff person. One of the churches that I was at, we had pastors' wives that kind of headed it up. And then I've been in churches when there's lay people that lead the women's ministry. So it looks different for every church. But again, I think it's just doing it. I know that sounds crazy, but when you see a need, meet a need. Okay. And if you have women in your church, there's a need, right? So another thing I would say too, though, is to be on the same page as your church leadership. We're under the authority, obviously, of God, but also of the pastor and the leadership team at the church. So just the communication and the vision of the church, what does that look like, and how can I come alongside with the women to running towards the same goal, I guess. So I would just say, go for it. Find some women in your church that are faithful, available, and teachable, the ones that are there, and meet with your church leadership and see how you can get something going. And it can be something so simple as just one small event that you invite the ladies to. But I've just seen the Lord be so faithful in the small things, and it leads to so much more. So that would be my encouragement. Just do it.
So, Laura, some folks are more equipped for leadership or gifted by God for leadership than others. How would you go about helping a church identify who's that person or those people who could either lead a women's ministry where there's not one, or even maybe a group that could lead it as a team to get something started? How would you help with that part?
Well, I think definitely learning the spiritual giftings of your women is super important. I don't need to ask a lady to teach a Bible study when teaching is not one of her spiritual giftings, right? So I think and we did this right when we came to our church that we're at now. I had a big kickoff, a big launch party with all the women, and I asked them those questions. We did spiritual gift testings, and where do you like to serve, and what's your passion? Okay. And so from there we can kind of break it down and say, okay, I'm going to ask this group to do this, and so on. But we want to put them where they're going to thrive, right? We don't want them to fail at anything, but we want them to thrive. And so we need to see where they're gifted and move them forward in that area.
So when you think about a women's ministry, an effective one, you've seen several, it sounds like. What are some key elements of an effective women's ministry?
I would say 5 things.
Okay. Bible
study, discipleship, missions, events, and leadership training. And I am excited. Sarah Robinson is actually coming to my house on Sunday to help lead some extra training for our women's ministry team. So I'm super thankful for resources such as Sarah, who is so gifted in that area, to be able to even pour into our team. But I would say those are 5 areas. If you're doing those things, your women are going to grow in their walk with the Lord. So
let's dig into those a little bit. On the Bible study, is that happening along with your regular church Sunday school or small group program, or is it happening in addition to?
So we typically have our women's Bible studies on Wednesday nights.
Okay.
And I will say right now, and it may not happen for too much longer because we are running out of space, which is a great problem, right. But I have really tried to keep our women together. I know we're probably going to get into like a multi-generational question here in a minute, but I really want our women to be unified together. So in Bible study that happens on Wednesday nights, and we typically have one offering. Right now, I've been at churches where they have numerous offerings, which is great too. Again, you just need to know your church and know your people. Sure. And I really feel like having them all together has helped with the generational stages of life, all coming together. I will say, in our experience, books of the Bible are what women attend the most, and our retention is the best at, which I love. Yeah. I love. It's not that we don't do topical Bible studies or anything like that, and we're getting ready to do testimonials like through the summer because vacations and people in and out. But when we spent about 8 months in the book of Exodus, and women are still talking about what they learned and how they, the characteristics of God that they saw as they were going through the book of Exodus. So that's what's worked for us. Yeah. I feel like women are really hungry for truth, no fluff, they just want the scriptures and they want to know and understand. So that's kind of what's worked for us in Bible study.
So in your 5 elements, you're differentiating discipleship from Bible study. And so how in your mind is discipleship different than Bible study?
Well, we've been intentional on putting smaller groups together. Okay. And this is kind of a creative thing that it's not anything new, don't get me wrong, but that we tried to come up with it the church really had not done before. We called them FAM groups, fellowship and mentoring groups. Okay. And so we would pair them together by availability and interest, things they like to do, not necessarily age. And so you had all age groups in these fam groups, and there were about 5 or 6 in a group. We gave them, material, some, not curriculum per se, but just some guidance on talking about the Lord, get into the Word. But then they also just scheduled fun things outside of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and to be completely real and vulnerable with it, not all of them went well. I'll be honest.
Sure, yeah.
Not all of them. And so for anybody listening, not everything is going to work perfectly.
Right.
And so you just need to know that. But for the ones that did work well, it was a beautiful thing. Yeah. We've had so many new faces and so many new families come into our church. It was a great time for them to get some connection outside of the church that they typically might not be able to get. So one story that I really love from that is we have an 88-year-old lady in our church. Now she acts like she's 65, but she's 88, and her husband passed away this year.
Oh, well.
Well, she was in one of these fam groups, and that fam group loved her, ministered to her. I mean, and they still get together. Yeah. I mean, this fam group's been going on for 1.5 years now. They still get together. They built the deepest friendships, and it's exactly what that lady needed in that season of her life. So that's kind of where we've gotten in discipleship. We do have some that meet one-on-one. It's not necessarily an organized thing within our women's ministry. It just, my prayer is that they naturally happen. Yep. Outside as we provide these opportunities, the one-on-one discipleship just naturally happens.
You mentioned missions as an element of a healthy women's ministry. So what does mission work? I know your church is involved in lots of different mission work, but yes. what specifically, how's the women's ministry involved in that?
We just always try to have some sort of mission emphasis. Like especially over the summer, we'll take some Wednesday nights and we'll pick an organization in town and do some sort of mission project for them. Anytime we have a big women's event once a year, we try to partner with a mission organization within our community to raise money for, bring items for, things like that. More of what we probably do is more local missions. But depending on your church, I mean, there's so many opportunities. I will say at one church we were at, we had a ministry called Hands and Feet. And so we went into a low income area of the community, and we all adopted a lady, an older lady that needed help with groceries, whatever she may need, going to doctor's appointments. And so I had my Miss Nancy, and I would help her anytime she needed. Wow. And it was a ministry it was of the women's ministry in that church. So there's all kinds of opportunities, and honestly things I would love to do more here in Paducah.
Yeah, that's great.
Eventually one day.
So yeah, you're ministering to that lady, but it's also ministering to you to get to help her. Oh, I think absolutely. I understand the events piece pretty well. There are all kinds of events that you all probably do or you go to. I've heard there's like a Women of Hope or something that's carried on as a larger event somewhere. And KBC offers gatherings. I know Sarah Robinson that you mentioned does. What about the leadership training? Like when you recognize someone who has leadership potential, how do you try to invest in them to help them grow as a leader?
Well, and I'll probably have to speak more to some other places that we've been because I haven't probably implemented that in the way I wanted to here quite yet, but Sarah is coming to do some training with it, so I'm excited about that. But I actually got to sit on a team where we wrote women's leadership training curriculum. And so we would have classes ever so often, maybe once a quarter. And so women would come to this class and we would teach them, what is it like to facilitate a small group? What is it like to teach a Bible study? And we would pour into them in that way. We would go over spiritual giftings again, just things like that to let them see where they can focus in ministry and where they're going to thrive the most. So just being intentional on spending more time with them and really encouraging, I guess. Yeah,
and then put them in a place where they can lead and see what happens. For some people it takes, and some people it doesn't. So, Laura, you'd mentioned that you all much of your Bible study is through books of the Bible. Do you have a curriculum that you use for that? And if so, how do you choose a curriculum? Just kind of put some guardrails in place So that, if a Bible study writer writes from a certain doctrinal standpoint, how do you process
Right.
that part, and how do you help women in your church who would say, well, I really like old so-and-so, and you know that maybe so-and-so's doesn't line up with where your church lines up. How do you navigate that?
Well, that kind of happened
Okay.
at our church.
Sure.
There was one specific thing that some of the women were really wanting to do, and my answer to them always is not necessarily me. Like, I do want to do it. If I'm going to put it in front of my women, I want to know that it is doctrinally sound.
Sure.
Or I'm going to get the insight of the leadership, the pastoral staff or somebody, but we're definitely going to go through that study individually before we put it in front of
sense.
our women.
Yeah.
I'm doing that right now with the study, actually.
Sure.
We're getting ready to go through Revelation. And so I'm actually doing a couple of different studies just to see, which one that we will actually use as we lead our women.
Well, good for you.
So,
good
so that's
good
kind of
safeguard. So what are some creative or meaningful events that you've seen really help women connect?
Well, I will go back to those fam groups. I think that's been one of our biggest things that we've done. And I won't talk about that much more, but we also have one big event a year at our church. It's always in November. We try to keep it the same time every year, and just prayerfully bring in speakers that can challenge our women, worship. But it's open to, everything we do is open to anybody. We're not exclusive in anything we do. But it usually draws people from all over Western Kentucky. So that's been a sweet time, of people being able to invite their friends to it. And we've seen some people, not somebody that hasn't been in church start coming to church because they were just invited to an event like that. We do a progressive dinner, which sounds. We go to 3 different homes.
Sounds fun, yeah.
It sounds fun. It does. I laugh because our first year that we did it, we had 30 women sign up, and we had 3 homes. It was a beautiful night. It went flawless. The second year we did it, we had like 80, 85 women sign up, and my host home was they were about to kill me, but they went through with it. So our women love that, and so that's another kind of challenge something I would encourage if you're looking to lead a women's ministry. Do things like keep doing things that your women show up to.
Yeah,
because
that's really fun.
That is a successful event. We're going to have to tweak it again because we're going to make it work, but we've got to get creative on how we make it work. But just do, we know our women love that, so we're going to continue doing that. However, we have to make it work, because we know they'll show up to it.
So, Laura, you mentioned an 88-year-old lady in your church. I'm sure there are probably some 20-something-year-olds there as well.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that all the generations are benefiting from one another, that each voice is being heard and understood, whether agreed with or not? How do you handle just the multi-generational part of women's ministry?
It's probably one of the hardest things, to be honest, to kind of handle. And I can speak to, when we first came to the church that we're at, and they would tell you this too. It was hard to get my older saints into a Bible study.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want the book, they didn't want the homework, They didn't want any of that, right?
Sure.
And so, I get that, I do. But I really think, well, first and foremost, the Lord's just had his hand on it. Mm-hmm. He truly has. But I think providing ways that they can intermingle outside of, even if it's a Wednesday night meal before church starts, just mingling with this younger age group and the older age group. And now in Bible study, I have from an 88-year-old to, I think our youngest was 23. Mm-hmm. in our last Bible study that we did. So anyways, we are finding that they are meshing. And I do think keeping them all together in one study and them being able to glean wisdom from one another has been definitely beneficial, definitely. But I wish there was a step-by-step, 1 through 5. This is exactly how you get this to mesh in your church.
Yeah.
I haven't figured that out if somebody has.
You got to get them talking to each other. I mean, you got to get that 20-something talking to that 80-something, and
That's right.
They're going to be best friends when the conversation's finished. So, Laura, what piece of advice would you give to someone who wants to start or strengthen women's ministry, maybe about how do you avoid burnout, or maybe about including unbelievers, or something entirely different? What's your piece of advice you'd give?
Well, again, just step into it. I have a friend, when we left one of the churches that we were at when my husband was called here. I was really nervous because I'd always been the helper. I'd always been, you need something done, I can help you do it. We had such great visionaries.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of knew coming that I might be that person. And I'll never forget my friend saying, especially on teaching Bible studies, because that wasn't my comfortable spot. She said, Laura, you don't have to have the perfect hair, the perfect makeup, the lighting, the video to be an effective Bible teacher. Yeah. She said, love the Word, read the Word, study the Word, and open the Word with your women, and let God do the rest.
Yeah, that's good.
And he has been so faithful to do that. And I'm so thankful that she spoke that over my life. But just don't be scared to do it. When unchurched and unbelievers walk into your church, I mean, again, just love them well. Mm-hmm. Just love them. And, we have just a very comfortable atmosphere. Our biggest room that we meet in, that we even have in our church, is right outside of our gym, and our kids are running and they're loud, and it's just a comfortable place where none of us are perfect. Mm-hmm. And a silly thing, I think name tags are always great. Mm-hmm. Name tags always make a new person feel good.
Sure, absolutely.
So that's kind of silly, but yeah, that's just what I would tell them. Just do it. Just don't be scared.
Just get busy and call Laura when you have questions, or call Sarah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You'll help them. Hey, that's fantastic. I love all this conversation, but I want to talk to you about leadership a little bit in our final minutes that we have together. So, Laura, who is one of your favorite biblical leaders and why?
Okay. Well, I'm going to go with Moses.
All right. You've just been studying Exodus for like a year, it sounds like.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I love the book of Exodus. Okay. But I've learned so much from Moses. I mean, he was chosen by God, but he was reluctant at first. And so how I can relate to that was so me.
Yeah, that's good.
He led the people through the desert for 40 years with all the challenges and grumbling of the people. Mm-hmm. As I read, I'm like, oh goodness. Yeah. But he loved them so well in spite of all the grumbling. So another thing we can learn. He was a mediator, between God and the Israelites, and just such a good reminder to me that I need to intercede on behalf of our women. Yeah. It's so important that our prayer life be strong in that way. He's a servant leader. He was a servant leader. He was a mentor to Joshua. Yep. And one thing that really spoke to me is in Exodus 18, whenever Jethro comes to visit Moses and he sees what all he's doing, he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, the people come to me to inquire of God morning and night. And he's like, this is not good for you. Mm-hmm. You've got to have a better system in place, right?
And not good for them either. You're going to wear out yourself and these people. Yeah. Right.
And so one of the things I probably struggle with is delegation. Mm-hmm. And so I desire people in my life like a Jethro that says, Laura, and I had an older lady in the church tell me not too long ago, you're doing too much. Yeah. Like you've got, so just learning to delegate is something that is hard for me. I'm not gonna lie. Sure. But just something that I have learned from the life of Moses. To try to implement into my life.
I love those answers. All right, so let's move. That was then. Let's move to now. Who is a living person? Who's a contemporary leader, known or unknown, that has influenced your life in a positive way?
Goodness, I would say, as far as I'm going to give you two answers, if that's okay. a Bible study teacher right now that is influencing my whole study of the Word is Christy McClellan. Just the way that she is teaching from that Jewish historical perspective has just really helped me, as I've been studying the Word. And then I just have women. I'm not going to name anybody specifically because there's too many of them.
Sure.
But there's one in particular at a church that we were at that I see the way she leads, not only in the church, but in her home with 4 kids, and just the way that she is just really balancing everything, which I know is not perfect, but yeah, I would say my friend Kristen is probably one that I glean from. Her wisdom, she's been in the church. Her dad was a pastor, been in the church a long time. So she serves very well and very faithfully. And I'm thankful to have her as an example in my life.
Laura, most of us need someone that we can look at who's leading.
Yeah.
And we won't do it the same way they will. We don't have to. God didn't expect us to, but at least we see what it could look like. So real quickly, what have you had to learn about yourself to lead more effectively? You may have already answered it with the delegation.
Right.
Say no sometimes.
Well, and I would also say I desire people around me that will challenge me and not be a yes person.
Okay.
I want... That sounds crazy because really who wants that? But I really do. I want people, when I throw out an idea or I think to go in a certain direction, that they will say, well, have you thought about this? Or are you sure that's really the direction? I desire that. I truly do. Because I feel like that takes a little bit of the weight off of the leader's shoulders whenever you have people around you that will just kind of keep you accountable.
Sure.
So I think that definitely helps me be a more effective leader when I am surrounded by people like that.
Last question. If you could give one piece of advice to younger leaders, and you're a younger leader, but if you could give one piece of advice to younger leaders, what would it be?
I would just say, love the Lord and seek Him in all you do. And make your personal time of worship a priority, because everything flows from that. It's so easy, and I have been so guilty of it, to spend all my time preparing. And I hear this about pastors as well, right? If you're just preparing for a sermon and there's not that personal time of worship, we're really missing out on the abundant life that, in Christ. So I would just say to be all in the local church, be all in what you do, be faithful, be present, love being there, right? Love the local church, because women notice that and they'll see that in your life.
Thank you, Laura. We have met today with Laura Butler discussing women's ministry. If you'd like to contact Laura, we'll provide her contact information in the comments. If you'd like to discuss women's ministry for your church, you can reach out to Sarah Robinson at KBC. Thank you for joining Leadership Lessons, and thank you for investing in yourself to lead more effectively for the glory of God and for the good of people. Thank you, Laura, for your ministry and your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Leadership Lessons. An audio podcast of this program is available on both Apple and Android devices. The Kentucky Baptist Convention was created by churches for churches to help churches reach Kentucky and the world for Christ. For more information about the KBC and the cooperative program which fuels our ministry, go to kybaptist.org. We'll see you next time on Leadership Lessons.